You're watching Wisconsin Eye, an independent, nonprofit public affairs network, engaging the citizens of Wisconsin since 2007 through access to government proceedings and public policy events.
Let's next move to the front lines. Jeff?
Okay, here we are for the 9:15 a.m. panel on the front lines. And I'm Jeff Maris from WisPolitics.com and WisBusiness.com. I want to thank our virtual audience. We're screening for your comments on chat, and we're trying to balance that out with comments here in the audience. So somebody is screening those, and we'll do our best to fit them all in. Want to welcome, going down the line here, Nathan Franklin. He's Director of External Affairs at Gundersen Health System. Jody Weedak. She's the Executive Director of the Parenting Place. And then we have Angie Wells. She's a Child Care Program Director at Cooley Children's Center. Yes, welcome all of you. So why don't we just start with Angie. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your organization and what's your stake, in this big issue?
My name is Angie. I am the director at Cooley Children's Center. I've been in education for about 15 years and management for 20. I came from teaching high school, and my position in its entirety, due to Act 10, was eliminated in the Madison area, and I was struggling of how do I pay rent? How do I pay my student loans? And I fell into early care and education, and I haven't looked back since. Cooley, as I talked about a little bit earlier, has been in existence since 1954. It's looked and changed as the times have changed. We're a high quality rated program in La Crosse. We're a 4-star center. We're actually going through our formal rating process right now. She's at our center today as I'm here, so I'm a little anxious. Jody's like, it's going to be okay. But yeah, I live in this universe every day. I have been in a lot of conversations about childcare and the importance of childcare, and the biggest crutch I think we have is how the community looks at us and how the community treats us. Cooley, I would say I did some number crunching yesterday, and I want to start out by saying Cooley is not the norm. Ruth shared some of the statistics with turnover and those things, and my Cooley's average 94% are college educated, so we are not childcare workers, we are childcare educators, we are teachers. Most of my staff, 54% or 57% have their current Wisconsin teaching license. So I love them dearly, but they could go work at the school district for La Crosse and make double what we can make in we can pay in the childcare realm. 78% have been at CCC for over 6 years. 50% have over 20 years of experience in early care and education. And our turnover rate for 2021 was 9%, whereas Ruth said I think it was 40% 5 years ago. My core group of staff are what make Cooley. But with that, there's a lot of struggles. I haven't been able to hire anyone since August of last year. We have very little applicants coming in, but I'll kind of share my... I'll keep more of the struggles and successes for later.
Right.
Jody, if you want to go.
So go ahead, Jody. We are going to explore what works, what doesn't.
Okay, my name is Jody Weedak. I'm the Executive Director at the Parenting Place. Our role in this region is to be the support for parents and child care providers. We help connect parents to child care. We've been doing that since 1990. We support child care providers with their educational directions, quality rating and improvement center. We do pre-licensing. I'm listing all of that so that to show that we are deeply immersed in this issue, and we have been ever since we opened our doors. In 1998, there were 450 regulated child care businesses in the county of La Crosse. Today, there are 76 regulated child care providers in the county of La Crosse who will take care of children ages birth to 5. As the number of slots decrease, We are hearing increasing concern from parents who they're saying, I have a new job. I moved here. I can't find childcare. I'm going to have to turn down this job. We don't hear that once. We hear that over and over and over again. One of the things that the vision of the parenting place is that we want all children to thrive. That's what our purpose is. When children are thriving, they are well positioned to succeed later in life. They need childcare. They need to thrive in childcare. Their parents thrive when we have access to good quality childcare. Businesses thrive when their workers have access to childcare. The childcare industry is not thriving right now. It is not thriving, and we really need to come together and figure out those issues. It's a community asset. It brings people into our area. It helps support the workforce. And children need this quality care so that they get launched well into their school years and so that parents can take care of their families and get to work.
Okay, so Nathan Franklin with Gundersen Health System. Nathan, why don't you tell us a little bit about Gundersen's stake in this big issue?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So, well, first I'd tell you personally why I'm interested in this issue. So I don't have young kids at home anymore. So I went through what people are going through now 10 years ago. So my son just got his learner's permit. My daughter's a freshman in college. But even then, we were lucky. We bookended our child care experience with wonderful in-home centers. But in between, we had the full gamut. We had a wonderful in-home site that kicked us out because she had too many kids. We had an in-home site who, despite promises, had people smoking in the house, and then our son came home with bruises on his legs. So we had wonderful preschool experiences for both our kids, so we were lucky that way. To echo what was said on the previous panel, I don't know how parents of any means are doing it today, which brings to why is Gundersen, as one of the major employers in our region in the upper Midwest, why are they interested in this issue? Why are employers in general interested? Why should they be interested if they're not? And Jody just started to hit the nail on the head. So there's the current problem, right? And I've only been with Gundersen about 2 years, and I can no longer count on two hands the number of talented, very promising young professional women, in all cases, who have left our organization because they couldn't find child care, or the child care they could find just erased their salary and it was no point, so they stayed home. That is talent that is not in our organization. And this is not just frontline staff, support staff. I'm talking about MDs as well. We lose doctors because they can't find child care. So this is affecting organizations from the C-suite through the high-level professionals, all the way through the ranks to support staff and working staff. So we're talking about current staff. We're also thinking about future staff, thinking bigger picture. 60% and growing of college graduates are women. That's our future workforce. And that pertains mainly to the professional, but that number holds as you go through technical colleges as well. So our next generation, if we don't start to wrap our brains and our hands around this issue now, our next generation of leaders is going to be dealing with this issue in spades. How is a workforce that's growing from a professional standpoint, growing increasingly more female, going to handle an issue in the next generation without child care, if the other trend holds, which is women leaving the workforce to take care of children? I would assume that would reverse at some point as well. So it's a workforce issue. It's also from a Gundersen priority standpoint, social determinants of health and population health issues are paramount in our mission. And from a living wage standpoint, a lifestyle standpoint, a community wellness standpoint, we need appropriate child care, high-level early education. We need to take care of our kiddos so that our communities will be just as healthy and just as thriving as they are.
All right, now let's try to explore what's working, what's not, on the front lines. So you're all on the front lines. Jody, what do you think is, let's start with what is working. What's working right now?
You know what? That's a really hard question to answer right now. I hate to say it, I'll be a little blunt. There's not a lot that's working.
I knew that this would be a short answer. So now
Right.
what's not working?
Right. Well, before I kind of share some thoughts, we just did a survey in La Crosse County of all the child care programs, and we learned something really startling, which is 19% of the child care centers in La Crosse County are on the verge of closing because of staffing shortages. It's 372 slots. It's enormous. So this is a great place to share that
And so
information.
let me just drill down on that though.
Yes.
So they're in danger of closing because of
their own staffing shortages.
Right, and that's due to poor pay, just not availability.
Compensation
what?
and benefits, exactly. Compensation and benefits, yes.
Okay, and
Yep.
when was that survey taken?
It was done here in La Crosse County in March.
Okay, so that's current information.
It is current information, and the point to that is that this situation continues to get worse. In September, there were 68 openings in local child care centers, local meaning La Crosse County. Now there are 74. Waiting lists were around 1,100 in September. They've increased to around 1,200. So there really is urgency into figuring out the workforce and the compensation so that child care centers can fill those open positions like Angie just talked about. And
So I asked, excuse me for interrupting, but I asked Ruth before, what's the level? What's the necessary level to recruit and retain workers, do you think?
Exactly what Ruth said. It needs to be in parity with what these professionals can earn in another sector. That just makes sense. Yep.
Okay. Angie, let's go to you. Well, I'll start with what's working. And is that going to be nothing? And then we'll go on to what's not working. But what's working? Is there something working? What's going well?
The staff that we have are amazing. They would give their life for this field. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to keep going back to Ruth, but Ruth kept saying we're hemorrhaging this field. My staff that have been here and in the field for 30, 40 years, they're tired, they're exhausted. During the pandemic, we had more responsibilities added on because it wasn't safe for them to be in certain places, but they were safe to be at our center. So we actually took on added children, added responsibility. And now that everything's kind of opening back up, we're like, when is our turn to like have a break and be able to take a breath? But now we're seeing the trauma that children are presenting and adding in more challenges to an already challenging profession. But my staff is what's working.
Okay.
The people in the field.
And the major obstacle to?
I mean, pay and compensation is one, but I think how the community, not just La Crosse, but nationally looks at us. I think some people don't understand what we do. I went to a training at CISA 4 probably a month and a half ago, and we were talking about Wisconsin Model Early Learning Standards, which is kind of the basis of what we create our lesson plans on. And a lot of kindergarten and first grade teachers are like, what's that? So we have this expertise in this training, but yet we're sometimes looked as less than. Even the low pay and benefits, we also have the community looking at us as less than K-12. And we're different, but in a lot of aspects, we are very much the same, and we have the same rigorous training, and we do lesson plans and portfolios, and we track students' progress, just like our K-12 educator counterparts do. So I think that's the second major obstacle.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So what can be done to improve, unfortunately in the United States, your pay level sometimes gets attached to your image. But okay, other than raising pay, what do you think things that could be done to enhance, the image of the child care educators?
Not to harp on my point last time, but having the city of La Crosse partner with existing child care centers instead of just going to a school district. And I know it's a pilot program, but it's another kind of preferably nail in the coffin of we're less than. So instead of going to, and I love the parenting place, but instead of going to the parenting place or to WICA or to the school district of La Crosse, actually talking to the leaders, the directors, the owners of these childcare companies that live in this every day, then you can have a real life picture of what this avenue is instead of kind of a watered down version. So I think going to the people in the field would be helpful.
Okay. All right. Now, Nathan, I haven't forgotten about you. So how many people are employed at Gundersen?
9,500.
9,500, and so that's a huge footprint here in the area. So you said you haven't been able to attract workers because of this issue. Do you have a workplace childcare, or do you depend upon independent childcare centers?
Both. We do have a center on site with 30 to 40 slots, depending on staffing abilities. And administrative capabilities as well. That's another gap. It's really hard on administrators right now running child care centers. But overwhelmingly, most of our employees are dependent on the child care that's available in the community.
Are you subsidizing that in any way?
We actually just committed to the growth partnership in the state to help subsidize employees' child care needs. Yeah.
So what do you think is working?
Well, Angie took a little bit of what I would have said. I think the dedication of child care workers, even the ones who leave the field, should never be in question. They're not leaving the field because they don't love kids, because they don't love the work. They're leaving the field for the same reasons most of us switch jobs. They see opportunities elsewhere. They have to think about their families and their livelihoods as well to expand. I would say that the community on a larger scale, waking up and getting more engaged in this issue is what is working, or at least starting to work. We need to be paying more holistic attention to this space. I've said this at a couple different events, but I always hope this is the last summit I have to attend on childcare. I say the same thing about broadband. I hope I never have to attend another broadband summit, because we know very well what the issues are and what we need to do to address them. We just have to stop talking about it and start doing it. There are a number of solutions. The county and the schools initiative, I think, is something that they should be looking at. I don't disagree with the model either that Angie's talking about, because there is an element here with our own child care center. And when employers, I think it was Ruth said in the first panel, when employers start talking about opening and expanding child care centers, it is an element of robbing Peter to pay Paul. What I admire about what the school district and the county is talking about is there will certainly be elements of that in the early stages, but they're also thought about it and incorporated the element of this is a channel to train more child care workers right there in the school district. So the hope is that if there is some rearranging of the deck chairs, at least there's a backfill element. They're talking about that. They're thinking about it. We always share that with other employers. When they come to us and say, you run a child care center, what advice, what pitfalls should we be watching for? And right now, that's the first thing we tell them, is be careful that you're not taking child care staff from other centers. The smaller centers then get driven out of business because they can no longer find staff, and we ultimately just make the problem worse. So what I like about what's happening now in events like this is that we are thinking about those things holistically, but we can't lose sight of them. That's really important. We need our child care centers that exist to not just continue to exist, but take the next step towards growing and thriving, because they are ready to take on other positions. And there are other models we should think about as well, which I can address later.
Okay. We have about 15 minutes, so I'm going to go to questions because there were some leftover questions from last time. But here's a question that's coming in from the virtual audience, and this is it's for you. It says, the question is, are the staff at the Gundersen On-Site Center employees of Gundersen? Are they receiving benefits, and is their wage the same as local child care centers or different?
Employees of Gundersen, they have benefits. In addition to that, Gundersen has made a commitment to have a minimum wage for all of our staff of $15 an hour, recognized, and we're doing a full staff compensation analysis to raise wages to be competitive across all our fields. And that's not just being competitive in the workforce with talent, but it's also recognizing that in areas like childcare, if employers need to make sure they step up to pay staff what they're worth, one, to keep them in our market and in our industry and in our organization, but also that those wages have a snowball effect in the community and make it so that, for instance, a child care center can raise rates to pay staff more, to retain staff, and have higher quality staff.
I'm Sherry Pika, and I own one of the owners. My daughter and I own the center together of Sprout Child Care, located on the south side. We do service probably about 65% of your Gundersen employees where we are. My question is kind of twofold, actually, to anybody who wants to answer. So one of the things is, do we see value in our current employers that are out there of looking at where do their staff already take their children? How can I help that area be able to raise the wages, to raise the quality? We're a 5-star center. We're a nationally accredited center. But there are centers out there that are taking your employees' children and cannot open up a door clearly for that. So number one, is there value in investing in where your staff are already going? We literally have, I know what you're talking about with as far as retaining your employees, because we had heads of your surgery department, heads of your departments that are leaving Gundersen, but asking us to please take that spot for the person that's replacing. And so my other question is to...
Well, let's just do one
okay,
at a time.
Sure.
So what's this question? Just
Is there value in our current employers out there in our workforce looking at current daycare centers that are already serving your employees to be able to keep those doors open and invest in them? Is there any discussion through Gundersen of doing that?
Yeah, definitely. And the Growth Partnership, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that I mentioned. That's a program through the Department of Children and Families where we've committed to partner with them to fully subsidize employees' child care depending on their income levels. Great. So that's coming from federal funded dollars, so we really applaud the state for that program. I think Senator Paff was here earlier. We've had support from him and others, and of course the state and the governor are on that program. So once that gets launched, that'll be, one, helpful for families, of course, but then ultimately being able to afford that allows talent, our workforce, to move into the child care space and hopefully give you some of those spots that are sitting empty, which can make it so you can hire more staff and continue that momentum.
Okay, we'll come back to you here. I just want to involve Jody here. Weigh in on the models, the different models and how they all mix, because it seems like you can't just do one or the other, right? It's such a big issue that it has to be a multi-pronged approach.
You are exactly right. It's a very complex issue. It's going to take equally complex solutions and a wide variety of them. What we've heard discussed right now, they all can contribute to the solutions or making it better. That's kind of where my mind was at with that question before about what's working. We don't really know what's working yet. Some things are starting to be tried, like the Partner Up program, which is the state investing. Oh, that's the one. Yeah. So what that is that's a program where the state of Wisconsin, through applications from employers, will support 75% of a child care slot. The state will fund that 75%, and then the employer supports the other 25%. That program is just starting. The application period closed early April. I think there were over 600 applications. So we just need some time to see what's going to start to work. Child Care Counts is another program that came out from the state to support. There are two different payment structures, and this is where I don't always know all the details, but there are opportunities for child care centers to get support to retain their workforce, and then also another kind of support for regulation and quality improvements. Do I have that right? So we've heard over and over again that without child care counts, child care centers would have been closed already. So what that's telling us is that infusion of resources, that those investments are helping to sustain the spots we have now, and they're probably not enough if we're still hearing, all right, we're on the verge of closing unless we figure out the staffing thing. So still waiting for some of these newer programs to get to work and see what the impacts are.
Okay, so Angie Wells of Cooley Children's Center. So, all the government programs, a lot of government money, sometimes that can be bewildering to, somebody like you trying to figure out all that stuff. Are you aware of all these programs? Could you be made more aware of the programs? What kind of access do you have to this or help in getting this money?
So our directors in our area are very educated. I have my master's degree. So I can read and understand a lot of the stuff that's coming out, but we have a lot of support in our state. We have shared services through Wiesen. I'm working with Nicole. She's doing a lot. Have help, parenting place. There's things that are coming out through DCF. But as a director, we have to be a jack of all trades. We have to have an understanding of HR. We have to have an understanding of accounting. We have to have an understanding of this. So you have to look outside of yourself and get that training. There are some smaller businesses or in-homes that may struggle, but I think they would go to their local CCR&R. Ours would be the parenting place, and they would probably reach out and ask for help. And if they can't find that help with their consultant, then they probably would kind of pass them along to somebody that could help them. But
could there be a better system of distributing it and getting out the information, do you think? Or or that's just the way it is? You're going to have to deal with this program, that program, this organization, that organization, this state agency, this local agency.
I mean, just like anything, I think it's difficult to know everything about everything. So there's grants out there that I have never heard of that are privately funded. The nice thing for most of these programs, they're coming out from our state, Wisconsin state leaders. So they're coming out from Department of Children and Families that we're part of our listserv. So we get emails twice a week. They're through WICA and Wiesen, and they're through the parenting place or your local CCR&R. So I think they're being filtered through really well. It's just having that time to sit down and actually do it. I think most of the directors in the area, I talked to a couple on my just drive here, and they're in a classroom today because of that worker shortage. So we have to do our job of just keeping a facility open and doing that accounting background and all the normal business pieces, but also being a mental health professional and being a teacher in the classroom. So it's just finding that extra time to do it, but I think the information's out there.
Okay, Jody, I'm going to go to you next. Well, I mean, how do you make sure that everybody gets the knowledge of this and to help people access it if they're short-staffed?
I think Angie really described very well that it's not an issue of not knowing. It's a time factor, and every time there's a new resource or support for a child care provider or program, there's a form that goes with it that has to be completed. The child care industry is so highly regulated, and the paperwork is immense. So any efforts we could figure out to create efficiencies so directors like Angie can fill out one form and get access to every single resource, that would be beautiful. Don't ask me how you do that, because it seems like a dream. But because the revenue streams are so siloed, it just makes it really challenging to make things efficient. And again, she is not hanging out in her office doing paperwork. No child care center director is doing that right now. They're in the classrooms.
Okay, here's another question for Angie.
Angie, I just wanted to talk a little bit about your 4K partnership with the school district, because that gives us a bit of insight into partnerships in our community with the school district. You currently are a 4K site, you had communicated, in a partnership with the school district. The contract that the centers are paid is $2,496 a year per child that you take for the school district. Does that sound accurate?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it sounds accurate.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. And you're required to pay your teachers during that time that they're teaching in that 4K program $23 an hour.
Yes.
That's the requirement of the school district, correct?
Yes. Yep.
And the district does not provide any consumable items. That's basically where the district ends. They don't provide any consumable items. They don't buy any food. They have no unemployment costs on these employees. You employ that teacher.
Yeah,
Is that
the
correct?
only thing they added this year to our contract is there's a very small stipend for consumables. So I think it's $10 per student per semester, I believe.
So the school district of Crosse communicated to me that these are 4.6 children is what they have in our community partnerships in child care centers currently. They receive between $6,000 and $7,000 of government funding per child of those 4K students, which people waste money to do, but that is what we need to be able to provide quality care and quality education for 4K students. That gives the school district of La Crosse an additional $4,504 for each one of those children that you are taking care of right now in their pocket, $108,000 that goes to their budget, that they do not have to do any work for whatsoever. So if you had that $108,000 to your bottom line budget, which is what has been set for us as to be able to provide quality care for 4K students, would you be able to pay your teachers better?
Yes.
Yes, you would. So we need to look at partnerships, would you agree, that are already within the school district? Because to spend $711,000 to create 15 spots on the south side for the public, 15 spots on the north side of the public, for the public, that is not a return on investment. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's what before this panel, I was saying that trying to set up a classroom is expensive. Materials are expensive. So if those ARPA dollars, and I don't want to keep harping on it, but if those ARPA dollars could be looked at in a more effective manner and not spent on materials, because anyone that's in this field, a toy shelf that has rounded edges or triple the cost that you would get somewhere else, but it's because it's early childhood and they can spend that kind of money. Looking at the most bang for your dollar, since it is a one-time use funds, that was my recommendation prior to this panel, is seeing if there's other ways to look at that. And I don't know enough about the partnership and the pilot program that the school district of La Crosse is setting up. If they're going to look at existing child care centers, if they're going to partner with the 4K partners already, I don't know about that enough to really talk about the pilot program. But in early childhood, we know how to stretch our money because we have to. So that would be my recommendation, is looking at a better use of those funds. Not saying that that's not a model that wouldn't be successful, but is there a way to trim that cost down a little bit? But
Okay, so we're out of time now. I want to thank very much Nathan and Jody and Angie for participating. Give them a round of applause, everybody.